back to Caldwell instead of keeping Susan's maiden name as her middle name. I don't want anything connecting me to her anymore, Ashley said. I know that sounds harsh, but I mean it. She made me into someone I hate. The Florida vacation home deposit was gone. The developer kept it as liquidated damages. David and Susan lost $75,000 in a single afternoon. Their credit cards were all maxed out, and the companies started calling for payment. Susan tried to negotiate, but they wouldn't budge. The truck got repossessed. Their fancy furniture was sold at auction to pay debts. Within 2 weeks, they'd gone from living in a $500,000 house to facing foreclosure. And through it all, Detective Rosenthal kept digging into my mother's death. She called me every few days with updates. We found 3 neighbors who remember hearing screaming that night. One of them almost called 911 but decided not to because the screaming stopped. Another neighbor saw David carrying grocery bags into the house around 6 p.m. Jennifer's car wasn't in the driveway yet, but David told police Jennifer had been home all afternoon, so he lied about the timeline. He lied about a lot of things. Detective Rosenthal paused. We also found Jennifer's best friend from 2002, a woman named Carmen Ruiz. She says Jennifer called her the morning of the day she died. Jennifer told Carmen she was planning to leave David and asked if she could stay with Carmen for a few days. Carmen said yes. They made plans for Jennifer to come over that evening with you. Jennifer never showed up because she was already dead. Because David killed her before she could leave. Can you prove it? We're building a case. The journal entries, the lies about the timeline, the neighbor testimonies, the fact that Jennifer told multiple people she was planning to leave. It's all circumstantial, but it's adding up. Detective Rosenthal's voice hardened. I've seen men walk free on less evidence than this, and I've seen men go to prison on more. It's going to come down to whether the district attorney thinks a jury will convict. When will you know? Few more weeks. Maybe a month. We're being thorough. I was staying at Margaret's house still. Reporters had found my old apartment and were camped outside. My landlord called to say I'd been evicted for breaking the no media circus clause that apparently existed in my lease. I didn't fight it. Margaret's guest room was bigger and safer, and I didn't want to go back to that studio above the laundromat anyway. But I couldn't stay with Margaret forever. So I drove out to Grandma's house one afternoon and walked through it with fresh eyes. It was too big for one person. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen that hadn't been updated since 1995. But it was paid off. It was mine. And my mother had lived here once, before she married David. I found more of her things in the attic. Boxes labeled Jennifer's belongings. Clothes that smelled like dust and old perfume. Books with her name written inside the covers. A jewelry box with cheap costume jewelry and one real piece, a silver locket. Inside was a photo of her holding me as a newborn. We were both sleeping. She looked peaceful. I took the locket and wore it. It felt like having her close. Ashley came by one day while I was cleaning out the garage. She looked different, thinner. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked more real than I'd ever seen her. I need to tell you something, she said. Okay. The night Mom showed us the photo of Jennifer with the bruise. Logan and I went back to the house after you left. We wanted to get some of our things before the bank took the house. And we found something. What? She pulled a small notebook from her purse. Mom's diary, from 2002. We weren't supposed to know about it, but Logan found it hidden in the back of her closet. My stomach dropped. What's in it? Ashley opened to a page marked with a sticky note. It's dated the 12th of June, 2002, the day Jennifer died. She started reading. David called me at work today, frantic. He said Jennifer fell down the stairs and died. He said it was an accident. He was crying on the phone. But when I got to the house, he wasn't crying anymore. He was calm. Too calm. He told me we needed to get our story straight. He said if people knew Jennifer was planning to leave him, it would look bad. He said we needed to tell everyone that things were fine between them. I asked him what really happened, and he just looked at me and said, she was going to take my son away from me. I couldn't let that happen. Then he told me to go home and act normal. He said if I told anyone what he'd said, he'd make sure I never saw Logan again. He was 3 years old then. I believed David would do it. So I kept quiet. The notebook shook in Ashley's hands. She kept quiet for 23 years. She knew what he did, and she said nothing. She helped him cover it up. She made you think you were adopted so you'd never question the story. She turned you into the outsider so no one would listen if you ever figured out the truth. Where is this notebook now? Ashley handed it to me. Give it to the police. Give them everything. Let them see what kind of people our parents really are. This implicates Susan too. She could go to prison. Good, Ashley said flatly. She deserves it. I called Detective Rosenthal. She came to the house within an hour and took the notebook as evidence. She read the entry Ashley had marked and her expression went cold and hard. This is a confession, she said. Susan Caldwell admitted David killed Jennifer and she helped cover it up. That makes her an accessory after the fact at minimum. Possibly conspiracy. What happens now? Now I arrest both of them. It happened fast after that. Police showed up at the foreclosed house where David and Susan were still living, squatting essentially since the bank hadn't physically removed them yet. David was arrested for second-degree murder. Susan was arrested for accessory after the fact and obstruction of justice. Both were denied bail. The district attorney held a press conference announcing the arrests and the reopening of Jennifer Caldwell's death investigation. I watched it on Margaret's TV with Ashley sitting beside me. Logan had refused to come. He was still processing everything and didn't want to watch his parents get destroyed on live television. "This is justice for Jennifer," the DA said, standing at a podium with Detective Rosenthal beside her. For 23 years, her death was written off as a tragic accident. But new evidence shows that Jennifer was the victim of domestic violence and that her husband, David Caldwell, murdered her to prevent her from leaving him and taking their son. His wife, Susan Caldwell, knew about the murder and helped him cover it up. Both will face the full extent of the law. Reporters shouted questions. Is the son involved? Did he know about the murder? The DA shut that down fast. Austin Caldwell was 2 years old when his mother was killed. He is a victim in this case, not a suspect. He recently learned the truth about his mother's death through documentation left by his grandmother, who suspected foul play for years but lacked proof until recently. More questions. What about the will? The inheritance? The DA looked irritated. This case is about murder, not money. But yes, Eleanor Caldwell left her estate to her grandson Austin after discovering that her son and daughter-in-law had been abusing him for years and lying about his parentage. That information came to light during the investigation and provided additional motive for the defendant's behavior. Ashley turned off the TV. "It's really over." "No," I said. "It's just starting. Now comes the trial." The trial didn't start for another 8 months. Pre-trial motions, discovery, jury selection. I spent that time trying to build a life that felt normal. I quit my job at the auto parts store and enrolled in community college to finish my degree. I started seeing a therapist twice a week to process everything that had happened. Margaret helped me set up the inheritance properly, investments and accounts, and a budget that would let me live comfortably without blowing through everything like my parents had. I stayed in Grandma's house. I renovated the kitchen and updated the bathrooms and turned one of the bedrooms into an office. I planted new flowers in the garden and fixed the porch railing and painted the shutters. I made it mine. Ashley visited often. Logan came by once, awkward and guilty, and we talked for hours about what it was like growing up in that house with those parents. He cried a lot. He apologized for every time he'd gone along with their cruelty. I told him I forgave him. I wasn't sure I meant it yet, but I wanted to. Maybe someday I would. The trial started in March. I sat in the courtroom every single day. Margaret sat beside me. Ashley came when she could get time off work. Logan never showed up. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. They presented Jennifer's journal entries, the neighbor testimonies, the timeline discrepancies. The forensic evidence showing Jennifer's injuries were inconsistent with a simple fall. Carmen Ruiz testified about the phone call from Jennifer that morning, about the plans they'd made. The original coroner testified about the old bruises he'd found on Jennifer's body. Susan's diary was entered as evidence, and the entry was read aloud in court. David sat at the defense table looking older than his 54 years. Gray, thin. His lawyer argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that the journal entries proved Jennifer was clumsy and accident-prone, that the timeline discrepancies were the result of trauma and poor memory, that Susan's diary entry was taken out of context. But then the prosecution called Susan to the stand. She'd taken a plea deal, testify against David, and she'd get 7 years instead of 20. She took the deal. She sat in the witness box in an orange jumpsuit and told the truth. David called me the afternoon Jennifer died. He told me Jennifer was leaving him and taking Austin. He said he couldn't let that happen. He said he'd pushed her down the stairs during an argument. He said it was an accident, but he pushed her. He admitted it to me. Then he asked me to help him make it look like she'd fallen. He told me to back up his story that everything was fine in their marriage. He said if I didn't help him, he'd tell police I was involved too. I was scared, so I helped him lie. David's lawyer tried to break her testimony on cross-examination, but Susan held firm. She'd made her choice. She was going to save herself by burying him. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the forewoman stood and read the verdict. Guilty of second-degree murder. Guilty of child endangerment for leaving a toddler in the house with his mother's body for an hour before calling 911. Guilty of evidence tampering. David showed no emotion. He just stared at the table in front of him while the judge set a sentencing date. 6 weeks later, he was sentenced to 35 years to life. Susan got 7 years as per her plea agreement. Both would be eligible for parole eventually, but the odds of them getting out early were slim. I didn't feel victorious when it was over. I felt empty, tired, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that now that it was gone, I didn't know what to do with my arms. Ashley hugged me outside the courthouse. "It's over," she said again. This time I believed her. I went back to Grandma's house and sat in the garden with the locket around my neck. "Mom," I said out loud, They can't hurt anyone else now. You can rest. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees. Somewhere a bird was singing. The sun was warm on my face, and for the first time in 23 years, I felt like I could breathe. Margaret helped me set up a foundation in my mother's name, the Jennifer Caldwell Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors. We funded shelters and legal aid and counseling services. We helped women leave dangerous situations. We made sure they had the resources Jennifer never had. Ashley became the foundation's first employee. She coordinated with the shelters and managed the grant applications. She threw herself into the work like she was trying to make up for all the years she'd stayed silent. Maybe she was. Logan spiraled. He moved to another state and cut off contact with everyone. Last I heard, he was working construction and drinking too much. Ashley worried about him, but he wouldn't take her calls. Some damage is too deep to fix quickly. I finished my degree, business management. I got a job at a nonprofit doing financial planning and discovered I was good at it. Good at helping people manage their money. Good at teaching them how to budget and save and build a life that didn't depend on anyone else. I started dating someone I met at school. Her name was Riley Chen, and she was studying social work, and she didn't know anything about my past until I told her. She listened to the whole story without interrupting, and when I was done, she said, "Your mom would be proud of who you became." I cried. I hadn't cried through the entire trial, but I cried then, sitting in a coffee shop with this girl I barely knew, because she'd said exactly what I needed to hear. 2 years later, I proposed to Riley in Grandma's garden. She said yes. We got married in the same garden with Margaret officiating and Ashley as the maid of honor. Logan didn't come, but he sent a card with a short message. "I'm happy for you. I'm sorry I can't be there. I'm working on being better. Love, Logan." It was enough. Riley moved into the house with me and we made it ours together. We painted the walls and updated the landscaping and turned the office into a nursery when Riley got pregnant. Our daughter was born on a Tuesday morning in October. We named her Eleanor Jennifer Caldwell, Ellie for short. I held her in the hospital and looked at her tiny face and made a promise. You will always know you're loved. You will always know you're wanted. You will never doubt that you belong. Riley smiled at me from the bed, exhausted and happy. She's perfect. Yeah, I agreed. She is. Margaret came to visit the next day. She was 70 now, officially retired, but still sharp as ever. She held Ellie and cried, "Your grandmother would have loved her." "I think she does," I said. 3 years after that, David had his first parole hearing. It was denied. 5 years after that, he had another one, also denied. Susan got out after serving her full 7 years. She moved to another state, and I never heard from her again. Ashley said Susan tried to contact her once, but Ashley didn't respond. Some bridges you burn completely. I saw David once after the trial. I'd gone to the prison to give a victim impact statement for his parole hearing. He looked old, broken, nothing like the man who'd terrorized my mother and made my childhood hell. He asked to speak to me before I left. The guard let us talk through the glass partition with phones. "I'm sorry," David said. His voice was hoarse. "I know that doesn't mean anything, but I'm sorry for what I did to your mother. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was angry and bitter, and I took it out on people who didn't deserve it." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you hate me so much?" "Because you looked like her," he said simply. "Every time I saw you, I saw Jennifer. I saw her eyes and her smile, and I remembered what I'd done. So I tried to make you disappear. I tried to erase you, but you wouldn't disappear. You kept existing, kept surviving, and it drove me crazy. I'm glad I survived," I said. "Me too," David said quietly. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you got the inheritance. I'm glad you got the truth. And I'm glad you're living the life Jennifer wanted for you." I hung up the phone and walked out. I never went back. Ellie is 7 now. She's smart and funny and kind. She loves dinosaurs and soccer and reading. Riley and I had another baby 2 years ago, a boy we named James after Riley's grandfather. They play together in the same garden where I proposed, where I scattered some of Grandma's ashes, where I sometimes sit and think about my mother and everything she lost. Ashley is married now too. She met a man named Marcus, who works as a teacher and treats her like she's precious. They have a daughter named Sophie, who's best friends with Ellie. The cousins play together at family dinners that happen at my house every Sunday. Real family dinners, the kind I never had growing up. Logan came back eventually. He got sober and moved to a town an hour away and reached out tentatively. Ashley met with him first. Then me. He's different now. Quieter. More thoughtful. He works as a counselor at a rehab facility and sponsors other men trying to get clean. He comes to Sunday dinners sometimes. It's still awkward, but we're trying. The foundation has helped over 3,000 women leave abusive situations. We've expanded to 4 states. Ashley runs it full-time now, and she's brilliant at it. She speaks at conferences and trains shelter staff and fights for better laws. She's become the person she wishes she'd been when we were kids. I'm 30 now. I have a family, a career, a life that feels real and solid and mine. I don't think about David and Susan much anymore. They're footnotes in my story, not the main characters. But I think about my mother every day. I think about her strength in documenting the abuse, her courage in planning to leave, the choice she made to protect me even when it cost her everything. I think about how she never got to see me grow up, but how everything I am is because of her. Sometimes Ellie asks about her grandmother Jennifer. We've told her age-appropriate versions of the story. That Grandma Jennifer died when Daddy was little, that she loved Daddy very much, that she was brave and kind. One day, when Ellie's older, I'll tell her the whole truth. I'll show her the journal entries and the photos and explain what happened. I'll make sure she understands that her grandmother was a survivor who fought back the only way she could, that she documented the truth so that someday, somehow, justice would be possible. But for now, Ellie just knows that we light a candle for Grandma Jennifer on her birthday every year, that we visit her grave and leave flowers, that her picture hangs in our living room next to Grandma Eleanor's. Riley comes up behind me while I'm standing at the stove making dinner. She wraps her arms around my waist and rests her chin on my shoulder. What are you thinking about? Just how different everything is, I say. How different it could have been. But this is how it is, Riley says. You made it this way. You and Ashley and your mom and your grandma, all of you fighting for something better. I turn around and kiss her. You're right. Ellie runs in, demanding to know when dinner will be ready. James toddles behind her, barely keeping up. The kitchen is warm and full of noise and life. This is my family. The one I chose. The one I built from nothing. And somewhere, I think my mother is proud. The inheritance gave me money and security. The trial gave me justice. But the years since then gave me something more important. They gave me peace. They gave me the understanding that I'm not defined by the people who hurt me, that I can be more than my trauma, that I can build something good from something terrible. I'm not the adopted kid who wasn't good enough anymore. I'm not the outsider who didn't belong. I'm Austin Caldwell. I'm a husband and a father and a son who finally knows his whole story. The good and the bad, the beautiful and the broken. And I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Update 1. The trial aftermath. The anniversary of David's sentencing passed quietly. I didn't mark it on the calendar, but I knew what day it was when I woke up. Riley noticed me staring at my coffee longer than usual. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. She knew better than to push. That's one of the things I love about her. She understands that some thoughts need space. Work kept me busy. The foundation was expanding into 2 more states, and Ashley needed my help with the financial planning. We were on a video call going over budgets when her assistant interrupted. I'm sorry, but there's someone here insisting on seeing you. She says she's your mother. Ashley's face went pale on the screen. Tell her I'm not available. She says it's urgent. She says it's about Logan. My stomach dropped. Put her on speaker. A moment later, Susan's voice filled the room. Ashley, please. I know you don't want to see me, but Logan is in the hospital. He tried to kill himself 3 days ago. They don't think he's going to make it. The video call ended. Ashley was already grabbing her keys. I told her I'd meet her there. The hospital was 2 hours away in the town where Logan had been living. Ashley and I arrived within minutes of each other. Susan was in the waiting room looking nothing like the woman I remembered. She'd aged 20 years in the 7 she'd been in prison. Her hair was gray and stringy. Her clothes looked secondhand. She stood when she saw us. Don't, Ashley said. Don't say anything. Just tell us which room. ICU, 3rd floor, room 307. Susan's voice cracked. They said family only and I'm still his mother, so they let me in, but he won't wake up. He won't. We walked past her to the elevators. I didn't look back. Logan was on a ventilator. His face was bruised and swollen. His arms were wrapped in bandages. The nurse who met us was kind but direct. He took pills and alcohol. His roommate found him and called 911, but it had been a while. They did what they could, but there's significant liver damage. Brain activity is minimal. Ashley sank into the chair beside his bed. She took his hand carefully, avoiding the IV lines. Logan, it's Ashley. I'm here. Austin's here too. You have to wake up. Please wake up. But he didn't wake up. Not that day. Not the next. On the 3rd day, his doctor sat us down and explained that Logan was brain dead. The machines were keeping his body alive, but he was already gone. Ashley sobbed. Austin, what do we do? We let him go, I said quietly. We let him rest. Susan appeared in the doorway. She'd been hovering in the waiting room for days. Let me say goodbye first, please. Ashley looked at me. I nodded. We stepped outside while Susan went in. Through the window, I watched her collapse beside Logan's bed, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Whatever she said to him, we couldn't hear it. After 10 minutes, she came out. Her eyes were red and swollen. I did this to him. I destroyed my own son. You destroyed a lot of things, I said. She looked at me like she wanted to argue. Then she just nodded and walked away. We withdrew life support that evening. Ashley and I stayed with Logan until the end. It didn't take long. 1 minute the machines were beeping and his chest was rising and falling. The next minute everything was quiet. Ashley cried herself sick. I held her and stared at my brother, the one I'd barely known, and felt nothing but waste. What a waste of a life. What a waste of potential. Logan could have been anything. Instead, he'd been crushed under the weight of who our parents were. The funeral was small. Me, Ashley, Riley, Marcus, Margaret. Susan came but stayed in the back. She didn't approach us. She didn't try to speak. She just stood there looking hollowed out and old. We buried Logan next to Grandma Eleanor. Ashley wanted him close to someone good, someone who would have loved him if she'd had the chance. After the funeral, I found Susan sitting on a bench near the parking lot. I sat down beside her without saying anything. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "I know you hate me. I don't hate you. I don't feel anything about you at all. That's worse," she said. "Probably." She wiped her eyes. "I was jealous of Jennifer. Did you know that? She was beautiful and kind, and everyone loved her. When David married me 6 months after she died, people whispered about it. They said it was too soon. They said I was a rebound. And they were right. David never loved me the way he loved her. He was always comparing me to her, always finding me lacking. So when you came along, looking just like her, I hated you for it. I hated that you were proof of David's real love, proof that I was second choice. That's not my fault," I said. "I know." Susan's voice was barely a whisper. "I know it wasn't your fault, but I punished you anyway. I made you into the enemy so I didn't have to face what I really was. A woman who married a murderer and helped him hide it. A woman who destroyed her own stepson to protect a lie. A woman who's lost everything because she couldn't stand to lose anything. Logan didn't deserve what you did to him." "No," she agreed. "He didn't. Neither did Ashley. Neither did you. I destroyed my whole family because I was weak and scared and jealous, and now I have to live with that." "Good," I said, standing up. "You should live with it. You should carry it every day for the rest of your life. Maybe that's your punishment. Not prison. Just knowing what you did and who you really are." I walked away and left her on that bench. I never saw her again. Ashley spiraled after Logan's death. She blamed herself for not reaching out more, for not trying harder to help him. I reminded her that Logan was an adult who made his own choices. That we can't save people who don't want to be saved. But grief doesn't listen to logic. She threw herself deeper into the foundation work. 16-hour days, weekends, late nights. Marcus worried. I worried. Finally, Riley sat her down and talked to her like the social worker she was. "You're running from the grief. You're trying to work yourself to death to avoid feeling the pain. But it doesn't work that way. The pain doesn't go away. You just get exhausted and the pain is still there." Ashley broke down. "I don't know how to live with this. I don't know how to accept that Logan's gone and it's because of what our parents did to us, to all of us." Riley held her while she cried. Then she set Ashley up with a therapist, the same one I'd been seeing for years, a woman named Dr. Patricia Hammond who specialized in family trauma. Ashley started going twice a week. Slowly, she started to stabilize. She cut her work hours back to something reasonable. She and Marcus started trying to have a baby. She planted a tree in her backyard in Logan's memory, and she talked to it sometimes when she was sad. Life moved forward the way it always does. Whether you're ready or not, whether you want it to or not. 6 months after Logan died, I got a call from Detective Rosenthal. She'd retired from the police force but kept in touch occasionally. "Austin, I need to tell you something. David filed an appeal." My blood went cold. "On what grounds?" "Ineffective counsel. He's claiming his lawyer didn't defend him properly, and he deserves a new trial. Will it work? Probably not. But it means the case will be reviewed. It means you might have to testify again. I wanted to give you a heads up. I told Riley that night. She was furious. He's already in prison. What more does he want? He wants out. He wants another chance to lie his way free."
My sister posted a photo of me and my 6-year-old with the caption, "When mistakes raise mistakes." My whole family liked it and started mocking us. But my ex-husband didn't. He posted one thing, and within minutes, chaos erupted. "Hey Reddit, my family decided to wage war because I said no to a loan request. They brought social media and lawyers. What happened next was absolute chaos. Here's what went down. Name's Amanda, 29 female. I was sorting through a week's worth of mail when my phone started lighting up like a slot machine. Constant buzzing, one ping after another. The kind of thing that makes your stomach drop before you even look. I picked up the phone and opened Facebook. The first thing I saw made me freeze. My sister had posted a photo of me and my 6-year-old son. We were sitting on the curb outside our house from maybe 2 weeks back. I looked exhausted because I was. Night shift at the distribution center, then straight into parent pickup, then homework and dinner and bedtime routines. My son was drawing with sidewalk chalk, making a rainbow. The caption, though, "When mistakes raise mistakes." I read it 5 times before my brain would process it. My full name tagged, my son's face clear as day. Public post. 300 people could see it. The comments were already stacking up. Someone from my old job wrote, "Yikes." My aunt dropped a, "Well, that's one way to put it." Then came the likes. My mother, my father, my cousin Caddy, Uncle Bill. All of them co-signing this public humiliation of me and my kid. This wasn't some random family drama moment. My sister's been the household mascot for bad decisions for years, and everyone treats it like a group project. She messes up, they excuse it. I set one boundary, I'm suddenly the villain. I've watched my parents cover her bills, smooth over her screw-ups, and act like accountability is abuse. Meanwhile, I'm the boring one with a job, a kid, and a schedule. So apparently, I'm the easiest target. Seeing them smash like on a post calling my son a mistake wasn't surprising. It was just them finally saying the quiet part out loud. My son was in the next room watching videos on his tablet, completely unaware. He was 6. He liked drawing and bad knock-knock jokes and watching cooking shows, even though he refused to eat vegetables. And my sister had just broadcast to everyone we knew that he was a mistake. I sat there holding that phone, reading every comment, watching the like count climb. Someone I didn't even know commented, "This is sad." Another person, one of my sister's friends, wrote, "The truth hurts sometimes." Caddy chimed in with something about how this is what happens when you burn bridges and expect help. That last one clicked everything into place. 3 weeks ago, my sister had asked me for money. $1,500 for a car, she said. Needed it to get to work. I'd told her no, not because I'm cruel, because the last time I'd lent her anything, I never saw it again. Worse than that, 6 months before, she'd stolen from me, walked into my house, went upstairs while I was making her lunch, and took my debit card from my bedroom drawer, pulled $600 out of my account. I only caught it when my card declined at the grocery store, and I checked my banking app in the parking lot. Same day she'd been at my place printing a resume. She'd sat at my kitchen table eating a sandwich I made while planning to rob me. I'd given her 3 days to come clean. She didn't. So I got the ATM camera footage from my bank, filed a police report, and reversed the transaction. The family lost their minds. Suddenly, I was heartless, vindictive. How could I do that to my own sister? Nobody cared that she'd committed fraud, and it wasn't like this was her only mess. She'd separated from her husband Lars 3 months before the theft, was already mid-divorce with a custody battle brewing over their 4-year-old son, and had been bouncing between jobs all year. But none of that mattered to our parents. She was still the victim in their eyes, and I was still the one expected to help clean up after her. This was payback. Public, cruel, calculated payback, elated. And everyone was helping her do it. Everyone except one person. My almost ex-husband, Mateo. We'd been separated for 6 months. Divorce papers signed and filed, just waiting on the finalization date next month. We barely talked anymore. Logistics about our son, who'd pick him up when holiday schedules. That was it. He'd moved out in May, took his stuff in trash bags and boxes, and we'd just sort of dissolved into polite distance. But his name wasn't in those likes, wasn't in the comments. He'd seen it, I knew he had. We had mutual friends, shared connections, but he hadn't engaged. 10 minutes later, Mateo finally popped up, not in the comments, but with his own post. He screenshot my sister's caption, blurred our son's face, and wrote, "Dragging a kid online is trash. Also, if anyone's confused why Amanda said no to money, ask about the debit card stunt and the police report." Within minutes, the post got shared in the family group chat, and it imploded. Mom started calling Mateo nonstop. I screenshot the post. Every comment, the like list, everything. Just knew I needed documentation. Then I set my phone down and stared at the wall for a solid 10 minutes. That night, I got a text from Caddy. Long paragraph about how I needed to take responsibility for my actions, how I'd alienated everyone with my attitude, how my sister was just being honest about a difficult situation. I didn't respond, just screenshot it. Something in my gut said, keep everything. The post stayed up all night. By morning, it had 67 likes and 42 comments. Some people defending me, mostly strangers or distant acquaintances. But the core family, my actual relatives, they were all in on it, supporting it, enjoying it. I made my son breakfast, got him ready for school, dropped him off. Then I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Mateo. He answered on the 3rd ring. "You saw it?" I said. "Yeah." We sat in silence for a few seconds. "I screenshot everything," I said. "Don't know why. Just felt like I should." "Good," he said. "Keep doing that." He didn't tell me what to do, just validated my gut reaction and hung up. It was more support than I'd gotten from him in months, maybe years. I went home and started a document, typed out the timeline, when she'd asked for money, when I'd said no, the theft 6 months prior, the police report, the family's reaction, then this post. I added screenshots, organized them by date, Put it all in a folder on my laptop labeled Records. People don't publicly humiliate you and then just stop. My sister was angry. My family was backing her. They wanted a reaction, wanted me to apologize, grovel, admit I was wrong for daring to hold anyone accountable. I wasn't going to give them that. The post stayed up for 3 days. I didn't engage. Just watched the comments pile up. My sister kept adding to it, posting in the comments about how she'd tried to help me over the years, and this was the thanks she got. My mother chimed in about how I'd always been difficult. Caddy wrote a whole essay about family loyalty and how I'd never understood it. I saved all of it, every single word. On day 4, something shifted. A few people started pushing back. Someone I went to high school with commented that posting someone's kid like that was inappropriate, regardless of family drama. Another person pointed out that calling a child a mistake publicly was concerning. My sister deleted those comments within minutes, but I'd already grabbed screenshots. Then the post disappeared entirely. Just vanished. I figured that was it. She'd gotten her petty revenge, realized it was backfiring, and backed off. I was wrong. 2 days later, I got home from work to find a door hanger from the Department of Social Services, Child Protective Services Division. It said they'd attempted contact and to call the number listed. There was also a voicemail on my phone from a social worker asking me to return her call. I stood there holding that door hanger feeling like I'd been punched. CPS. Someone had called CPS on me. I knew immediately who it was. Had to be my sister, or my mother, or both. This was escalation. I went inside and called the number back, scheduled an appointment for the next morning at 10. Then I tore through the house, checked for anything that could be used against me. Dishes in the sink, I washed them. Laundry in baskets, I folded it. My son's room was already clean because he was weirdly organized for a 6-year-old. I vacuumed, wiped down counters, made sure the fridge was stocked, changed the sheets, made the house look like something from a catalog. My phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. Then I realized it was my sister's friend Priya, someone I'd met at a few family gatherings. The message was short. I'm sorry. She shouldn't have done this. She texted our group chat yesterday saying, "Watch how fast she loses her kid, and I thought you should know. I have 2 kids, and I couldn't stay quiet about this." I screenshot it immediately, sent it to myself via email for backup. Then I called Mateo. He showed up 20 minutes later. CPS, I said, showing him the door hanger and playing the voicemail on speaker. They're coming tomorrow at 10. He read it. Didn't look surprised. Just tired. What do you think they reported? I don't know. Whatever sounds convincing enough to get someone to show up. He walked through the house, taking it in. Everything was spotless now. He nodded slightly, like he was checking boxes in his head. You need to install a doorbell camera, he said. Tonight, before they come back. I don't have one. I do. It's in my truck. I'll put it up now. He spent the next hour installing a video doorbell, showing me how to use the app, making sure it captured the entire front porch. Then he sat with me at the kitchen table and we made a list. Every adult who'd been in the house in the last month, every doctor appointment my son had attended, his school attendance record, his last checkup dates, medications, none, allergies, none, emergency contacts, everything. You're going to be fine, he said, but you need to treat this like a legal proceeding. Don't get defensive. Don't trash your sister even if you want to. Just answer their questions and show them a stable home. I wanted to ask why he was helping me. We were getting divorced. This wasn't his problem anymore. But I didn't. Just nodded and added more information to the list. He stayed until almost midnight, helped me organize documents, find my son's immunization records, pull up proof of employment and rent payments. When he finally left, he stopped at the door. Call me after they leave tomorrow. Let me know how it goes. The social worker showed up at exactly 10 a.m. Woman in her 40s, tired eyes, carrying a tablet and a folder. I let her in immediately, offered coffee, kept my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. She asked to see the house. I showed her everything. Kitchen, living room, both bedrooms, bathroom. Can I ask what this is about? I said when we sat back down. She consulted her tablet. We received a report expressing concerns about the child's welfare. Allegations of emotional abuse and possible neglect. Can you tell me specifics? The reporter claimed the child is frequently left alone, that there's conflict in the home, and that you've been posting concerning content about the child on social media. I almost laughed. I haven't posted anything about my son on social media in months, I said. But someone else did post about him recently. Would you like to see it? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. The original post, the caption, my sister's name right there at the top. Then I showed her the text from Priya. Watch how fast she loses her kid, sent the day before the CPS visit. The social worker's expression didn't change, but she took notes. Asked me to email her copies of everything. Then she asked to speak to my son. I called him in from his room. He sat on the couch looking confused. The social worker asked simple questions. 20 minutes later, she stood to leave, handed me her card. I'll need to make one more visit, probably next week, but preliminarily, I'm not seeing evidence of the allegations. Your home is appropriate, your son seems well adjusted, and you've been cooperative. After she left, I sat on the couch and shook for 10 minutes. Then I called Mateo. It was my sister, I said. Had to be. The social worker said they got a report about me posting concerning content about my kid online. That's projection, he said. Your sister posted it, so she reported you for posting it. That's insane. That's desperate. He was right. My sister had gone nuclear because the original post hadn't destroyed me the way she wanted. So she'd escalated, tried to get my kid taken away. And when that didn't work, she'd probably escalate again. I printed out the screenshots and put them in a binder. Added the CPS business card, the social worker's notes, everything. Mateo was right. I needed to be ready. 3 days later, I got served with papers. Emergency guardianship filing. My parents were petitioning the court for temporary custody of my son, citing my inability to provide a safe and stable environment, and my documented pattern of instability. I sat in my car reading the paperwork and felt something shift. They were trying to take my kid. This wasn't family drama. This was war. I'd never hired a lawyer before. Didn't even know where to start. I Googled family law attorneys, read reviews, called 3 offices. The first 2 couldn't see me for weeks. The third had a cancellation the next day. Her name was Nora. Office in a strip mall between a tax place and a nail salon, but the reviews were solid. I showed up 15 minutes early with my binder and a legal pad covered in notes. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, and she didn't waste time on small talk. I laid out everything: the Facebook post, the CPS report, the emergency guardianship filing, showed her my documentation, the timeline I'd built. She flipped through it all without expression. Then she looked up. "This is good work," she said. "You've got dated evidence, multiple sources, clear timeline. That puts you ahead. So I can fight this?" "Absolutely. Emergency guardianship requires proof of immediate danger. Your house is clean. Your kid is healthy. CPS hasn't substantiated anything. Your parents don't have a case. But we need to be thorough." She charged $200 an hour with a $1,500 retainer. I paid it with money I'd been saving for a new transmission. Priorities shift fast when someone's trying to take your kid. She gave me homework. Get statements from my son's teacher and pediatrician. Nora had me sign release forms, so the school and pediatrician could talk directly to her if needed. I emailed my son's teacher the same afternoon, and she printed a short note on school letterhead the next day. The pediatrician's office was slower, but they gave me a stamped visit summary and a letter confirming he was up to date on checkups. Compile more evidence of my sister's harassment. Document every interaction with my family from here on out. They're going to paint you as unstable, she said. So we show the court the opposite. Steady job, stable housing, involved parent. Then we show them who's actually unstable. Mateo met me at a diner near my work that night. I'd texted him about the guardianship filing, and he'd responded immediately asking to meet. He showed up with a notebook and that same calm energy he'd had the night before the CPS visit. "I've been thinking about this," he said, before I'd even ordered. "Your sister's escalating because the first attempt didn't work. That means she's going to keep trying until something sticks, or until she gets shut down hard enough that she has to stop." Nora said the same thing. "Nora's your lawyer?" I nodded. He looked relieved. "Good. You need representation. But you also need more documentation." He pulled out his phone and showed me a spreadsheet. He'd made a timeline. Every incident with my sister going back 2 years. The money requests. The theft. The police report. The Facebook post. Everything. "How did you have time to do this?" He shrugged. "I remember most of it. I was there for some of it. The rest I pulled from your texts and old emails you'd forwarded me. We'd been separated. Divorce papers signed. But here he was. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. He was quiet for a while. "Because I should have helped you before," he said. "When your family was treating you like garbage, I stayed quiet. Thought it wasn't my place to get involved. And because that's my son too. I'm not letting your parents take him because your sister's having a meltdown." The hearing was set for 2 weeks out. Nora filed a response opposing the emergency guardianship, but until then, nothing changed. My son stayed with me. My parents didn't have temporary custody, but the threat hung there like a storm cloud. I took photos of the house daily, time-stamped and dated. I logged every meal I made, every homework session, every bedtime. I got a statement from my son's teacher saying he was a well-adjusted, happy child who came to school clean and prepared. His pediatrician wrote a letter confirming he was healthy, up to date on checkups, and showed no signs of neglect. Mateo installed more cameras, one on the back door, one in the driveway. Not because I thought my parents would try to grab my son, but because I wanted footage of everything. Every time they showed up uninvited, I'd have proof. They showed up 4 days before the hearing, both of them, pulled into my driveway at 7 p.m. while I was making dinner. The doorbell camera caught everything. I didn't answer. Just watched through my phone as they rang the bell 6 times, knocked, called my name. My mother pressed her face to the window trying to see inside. My son was upstairs doing homework. Didn't even know they were there. After 10 minutes, they left. I saved the footage and sent it to Nora. She called me an hour later. That's good. We can use that for the harassment claim. What harassment claim? The one we're filing next week, she said. After we beat this guardianship thing, we're going after a no-contact order and possibly sanctions for filing a frivolous emergency petition. Mateo started coming over most evenings, just to help organize. We built what Nora called a good parent binder. Everything in one place. School records, medical records, work schedule showing steady employment, rent receipts, utility bills all paid on time, character references from neighbors and co-workers. It was 3 inches thick by the time we finished. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed running through worst-case scenarios. What if the judge sided with my parents? What if they found some technicality? What if my sister showed up and lied under oath and the judge believed her? At 2 a.m., Mateo texted me, "You're going to be fine. They have nothing." I didn't ask how he knew I was awake. Just texted back, "Thanks," and tried to breathe. The courthouse was smaller than I expected. Nora met me in the hallway, looking calm in a navy suit. "Your parents are here," she said, "with their attorney. Your sister's not here, which is interesting." Why is that interesting? Because she's the one driving this. If she was confident, she'd show. Her absence says a lot. We walked into the courtroom. My parents sat on the other side with a lawyer I didn't recognize. My mother looked stern. My father looked uncomfortable. Neither of them made eye contact with me. The judge reviewed the paperwork for what felt like forever before looking up. She asked everyone to state their names for the record, then reminded my parents' attorney this was an emergency petition, not a custody trial. When he tried to talk in circles, she cut him off and asked for actual evidence. Dates, incidents, anything concrete. My parents' lawyer stood. He made his case, claimed I was unstable, pointed to the CPS report as evidence of concerns, said my parents were worried about their grandson's welfare in my care. Nora objected twice. Once when he tried to characterize the CPS visit without actually having the report. Once when he implied I had a history of mental health issues with zero evidence. Then it was our turn. Nora stood and destroyed them. She submitted the CPS report showing the case was closed as unfounded, submitted statements from my son's teacher and pediatrician, my employment records showing steady work history, photos of my home, documentation of my son's routine, proof of paid bills and stable housing. Then she played the doorbell camera footage of my parents showing up uninvited and persistent contact despite no response. Submitted screenshots of the Facebook post with the judge's permission. Pointed out that the person who posted it, my sister, was notably absent from these proceedings, despite being the one who apparently expressed concerns to my parents. "This isn't a case about child welfare," Nora said. "This is a family dispute being weaponized through the court system. The child in question is healthy, happy, well cared for, and in a stable home. This filing is retaliatory." My parents' lawyer tried to push back, said the CPS report existing at all was concerning, regardless of outcome. Nora countered that false reports made in bad faith are actually evidence of harassment, not legitimate concern. The judge took off her glasses and looked directly at my parents. "I'm not seeing an emergency. I'm seeing a child who's attending school regularly, receiving medical care, living in appropriate housing with his mother, who has no history of neglect or abuse. The CPS case was closed as unfounded. I'm denying this petition." My mother started to speak. The judge held up a hand. "I'm not finished. I'm also noting for the record that filing emergency petitions without evidence wastes court resources and can be sanctioned. I'm warning counsel that any future filings of this nature will be scrutinized heavily." She banged her gavel. The whole thing took 45 minutes. My parents tried to approach me in the hallway. Nora stepped between us. "No contact with my client," she said firmly. "Any further communication goes through me." We left them standing there. My mother looked furious. My father looked defeated. I felt nothing, just tired. In the parking lot, I called Mateo, told him the judge had denied the petition. He was quiet for a second, then I heard him exhale. "I'm proud of you," he said. We hadn't talked like that in years. Maybe ever. I sat in my car and cried for 5 minutes before driving home. Nora filed for a civil harassment restraining order the next day, named my sister, my parents, and Caddy. The petition was detailed, listed every incident. "This is going to take about 3 weeks to get a hearing date," she said. "In the meantime, if they contact you, save it. If they show up, record it. If they try to use intermediaries, document that too. They didn't contact me directly, but they tried other ways. I also gave my supervisor a heads up that my family might show up again. I didn't dump the whole story. Just said there was an active court."
My coworker spent 3 years harassing me for being a single mom and locked my daughter in a dark closet. I got her arrested. I'm a single mom working as an account manager at a marketing firm. I'd been there 3 years when Lindsay joined our team. She was married with no kids and made it clear from day one that she thought mothers didn't belong in the workplace. She'd roll her eyes when I'd leave at 5 to get my daughter Sophie from daycare. She'd make comments about how parenthood was a choice and shouldn't affect the team. During my first presentation after she joined, Lindsay interrupted to ask if I'd prepared it myself or if I was too busy with mommy duties. Our manager Erin just laughed uncomfortably. She started telling clients I might not be available for projects because of childcare issues, even though I'd never missed a deadline. She'd schedule important meetings at 4:45, knowing I had to leave at 5 for daycare pickup. When I'd ask to dial in, she'd say physical presence showed commitment. One time Sophie got sick at school and I had to leave early. Lindsay sent an email to the whole team about how some people use their kids as excuses to skip work. She actually created a spreadsheet tracking every time I left for anything child-related and presented it at our quarterly review. Erin said it showed initiative that Lindsay was monitoring team productivity. She started leaving parenting articles on my desk about the damage working mothers do to their children. She told the interns I only got promoted because the company needed to meet diversity quotas for single mothers. She'd loudly take personal calls about her amazing child-free vacations while staring at me. She actually asked Erin why the company wasted benefits on dependents when that money could go to bonuses for employees without kids. Then came Take Your Child to Work Day. The company encouraged everyone to participate. I brought Sophie, who was 5 and excited to see mommy's office. She had her little backpack with coloring books and sat quietly at my desk while I worked. Lindsay walked by and told Sophie that her mommy was selfish for making her sit in an office instead of playing with friends. Sophie asked what selfish meant. Lindsay said it meant caring more about money than your child. I told Lindsay to stop, but she said she was just being honest with the kid. During lunch, I took Sophie to the break room to eat. When we came back, Lindsay had moved all my files to say I was being unproductive having a child present. She complained to Erin that Sophie's presence was disruptive even though Sophie hadn't made a sound. Erin asked if maybe I could have Sophie sit somewhere else. I put Sophie in the small conference room with her coloring books and told her I'd be right outside. I could see her through the glass door. I went to the printer for 2 minutes to grab reports. When I came back, Sophie was gone. Her backpack was there, books open, but she was nowhere. I ran through the office calling her name. Reception hadn't seen her leave. The bathrooms were empty. I was starting to panic when I heard tiny knocking from the supply closet down the hall. The door was locked from the outside. I opened it and Sophie fell out crying. She was terrified. Said a lady told her there were toys in there, then shut the door. She'd been in the dark for 10 minutes screaming, but nobody heard her because that hallway was empty. I knew immediately it was Lindsay. I carried Sophie back to the main office where everyone could see her sobbing. Lindsay was at her desk typing like nothing happened. I asked her directly if she locked my daughter in the closet. She said that was a serious accusation, and she'd been at her desk the whole time. Sophie pointed at her and said that's the lady. Lindsay said kids make things up for attention, and maybe Sophie locked herself in by accident. Erin came over and Lindsay immediately started crying, saying I was creating a hostile work environment by accusing her of something so horrible. She said she was thinking about calling HR about my harassment. Erin told me to take Sophie home and we'd sort this out tomorrow. That night, I went back to the office with building security. I asked them to check the keycard logs for the supply closet. The system showed Lindsay's card accessing it twice, right when Sophie disappeared and right before I found her. Security pulled the hallway footage. The video showed everything. Lindsay walking up to Sophie in the conference room, bending down to talk to her, then leading my daughter by the hand down the hallway. She swiped her keycard at the supply closet, opened the door, pointed inside like she was showing Sophie something interesting, and the second my baby stepped in, Lindsay pulled the door shut and walked away. The timestamp matched exactly when I'd been at the printer. The security guard made 2 copies of the footage right there, one for me and one for the police. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. The operator asked what my emergency was, and I told her someone had locked my 5-year-old daughter in a dark closet at my office building. She asked if my daughter was safe now, and I said yes, she was with me. But I had video proof of who did it, and I wanted to press charges. The operator said she was sending officers to my location and to stay where I was. The 2 police officers showed up in less than half an hour. They were both older guys, one tall with gray hair and one shorter with a thick mustache. The security guard showed them the footage on his computer screen, and I watched their faces change as they saw Lindsay lock Sophie in that closet. The tall officer asked if he could get a copy of that video, and the security guard handed him the disc he'd already burned. Then they asked me to tell them what happened from the beginning. I explained about Take Your Child to Work Day, about leaving Sophie in the conference room for just 2 minutes, about finding her gone and hearing her screaming from inside the locked closet. The shorter officer wrote everything down in a little notebook. Then I told them this wasn't just a random thing, that Lindsay had been harassing me for 3 years about being a single mom. I pulled out my phone and showed them some of the emails Lindsay had sent about me being unreliable because of my kid. The tall officer looked at the shorter one and said this was criminal confinement and child endangerment, possibly assault on a minor. He asked if I wanted to press charges, and I said absolutely yes. They asked me to wait in the lobby with Sophie while they went upstairs to talk to Lindsay. I carried Sophie down to the first floor and sat in one of the big leather chairs near the elevators. She was asleep against my shoulder, her face still blotchy from crying earlier. I could feel her little heartbeat against my chest, and I wanted to cry thinking about how scared she must have been in that dark closet. About 15 minutes later, I heard voices coming from the elevator area. Loud voices. Then the elevator doors opened and the 2 officers came out with Lindsay between them. She was in handcuffs. Her face was bright red and covered in tears, and she was yelling that this was all a big misunderstanding, that she would never hurt a child, that I was lying about everything. The shorter officer told her to calm down, and she just screamed louder. Other people in the lobby stopped and stared as they walked her past me toward the front doors. Lindsay looked right at me and yelled that I was going to regret this, that she had done nothing wrong. The tall officer put his hand on her head and guided her into the back of the police car parked outside. I was still sitting there trying to process what just happened when Aaron came running out of the elevator. His tie was loose and his face looked panicked. He rushed over to me asking what was going on. Why were the police here? What happened to Lindsay? I could tell he had no idea this would actually involve cops. I pulled up the security footage on my phone that the security guard had sent me and held it out to him. He watched the whole thing, his face getting paler and paler as he saw Lindsay walk Sophie to that closet and lock her inside. When it ended, he just stood there with his mouth open. He tried to say something about how maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Lindsay didn't mean for the door to lock. I stood up, careful not to wake Sophie, and told him there was no explanation that made locking a 5-year-old in a dark closet okay. I told him I was pressing charges and that he should probably call the company's lawyer, because this was going to be a big problem for everyone who ignored my complaints about Lindsay for 3 years. Then I walked out to my car and went home. The next morning, my phone rang at 8. It was a detective who said he'd been assigned to my case. He asked if I could come to the police station that afternoon to give a formal statement. I said yes and asked what I should bring. He told me to bring any evidence I had of prior harassment or problems with Lindsay. I spent the next 2 hours gathering everything. I printed out the spreadsheet Lindsay had made tracking every time I left early or came in late because of Sophie. I printed all the emails where she told clients I might not be available for projects. I took screenshots of the messages she'd sent to the interns about me only getting promoted because of diversity quotas. I put it all in a folder and drove to the station. The detective was a middle-aged guy with kind eyes who introduced himself and led me to a small interview room. He had me sit down and tell him everything from the beginning. I went through the whole 3 years. Every comment Lindsay made, every meeting she scheduled at 4:45, every article she left on my desk about bad mothers. He listened and took notes and didn't interrupt. When I finished, he asked if there were other people who witnessed Lindsay's behavior toward me. I gave him the names of the receptionist who sat near our desks and heard Lindsay's daily comments. I gave him the names of the 2 interns Lindsay had talked to about me. He wrote all of it down and said this was really helpful because it showed a pattern of behavior that led up to what happened to Sophie. He said it proved Lindsay didn't just make a mistake. She had been targeting me and my daughter for a long time. That word, targeting, made my stomach hurt. When I got home that afternoon, my phone rang again. This time it was someone from HR asking if I could come in for a meeting the next day. I said I wanted to bring a lawyer, and there was a long pause on the other end. The HR woman said that was fine and asked who my lawyer was. I didn't have a lawyer. I called my friend Lisa, who I'd known since college. She was a lawyer, but she did contract law, not criminal stuff. I told her what happened, and she said she would come to the meeting with me anyway. She said what happened to Sophie was horrible, and she wasn't going to let the company try to cover it up or push me out. The HR meeting was in a conference room on the 3rd floor. The HR representative was a woman in her 50s who looked really uncomfortable. She had the police report in front of her and a laptop showing the security footage. Lisa sat next to me and introduced herself as my legal representation. The HR woman asked me to walk through what happened on Take Your Child to Work Day. I did, keeping my voice steady even though I wanted to cry thinking about Sophie trapped in that closet. When I finished, the HR woman said the company took this very seriously and they were conducting their own investigation. Lisa leaned forward and said that was good, but they needed to understand the company was liable for allowing 3 years of documented harassment to continue. She pointed out that I had filed complaints about Lindsay multiple times and Aaron had dismissed all of them. The HR woman's face went even more uncomfortable, and she admitted they had documentation of my previous complaints in my file. She said those complaints had been reviewed by management and deemed not serious enough to warrant disciplinary action. Lisa asked her if she thought locking a child in a closet was serious enough now. The HR woman cleared her throat and said the company was taking immediate action. She told me Aaron was placed on administrative leave while they investigated his handling of my complaints. She said they wanted to offer me paid leave to take care of Sophie and handle the legal stuff with Lindsay's case. Lisa asked about therapy costs for Sophie, and the HR woman said they would cover that too. Lisa pulled out a document she'd prepared and slid it across the table. It was a written agreement that the company wouldn't retaliate against me in any way for pressing charges against Lindsay or for any statements I made during the investigation. The HR woman said she needed to have their legal team review it, but she thought they could agree to those terms. 3 days later, I got a call from the prosecutor's office telling me Lindsay's arraignment was scheduled for that afternoon. I asked if I needed to be there, and the prosecutor said it would be helpful but not required. I went. I sat in the back of the courtroom and watched Lindsay stand in front of the judge in an orange jumpsuit. Her lawyer was a young guy in a cheap suit who argued that Lindsay never intended to hurt Sophie, that she was just trying to play with her and didn't realize the door would lock automatically. The prosecutor stood up and pointed out that the keycard logs showed Lindsay used her access card to open the door, which meant she knew it required a keycard to open from the outside. She knew Sophie would be trapped in there. The judge asked Lindsay how she pleaded, and her lawyer said not guilty. The judge set bail at $50,000 and set a preliminary hearing date for 2 weeks later. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. Lindsay's husband was in the front row, and I watched him pull out his phone, probably calling someone about the bail money. I left before they did because I didn't want to see her face again. The news story aired 2 days later. I was making Sophie dinner when my phone started blowing up with texts from coworkers. Someone had leaked the police report to a local news station, and they ran a piece about workplace harassment that ended with a child locked in a closet. They showed the outside of our office building and mentioned the company by name. My mom called asking if I was okay, and if she should come stay with us. I told her we were fine, but she came anyway. That night, 3 women who used to work at the company reached out to me through LinkedIn. They all had similar stories about Lindsay making comments about their kids and questioning their commitment. One woman said Lindsay told a client she was unreliable because she had twins at home. Another said Lindsay scheduled mandatory team dinners on nights she knew people had to pick up their children. They had all left the company within a year of Lindsay joining. None of them had reported it because they saw how my complaints went nowhere. I took Sophie to a child psychologist the next week. The office had toys in the waiting room, but Sophie sat pressed against my side the whole time. The doctor was a woman in her 40s who specialized in childhood trauma. She talked to Sophie alone for 30 minutes while I waited outside. When they came out, Sophie was holding a stuffed bear the doctor had given her. The doctor asked me to come back to her office while Sophie played in the waiting room where I could see her through the window. She told me Sophie had acute stress response from what happened. She was having nightmares about being trapped in dark places. She wouldn't sleep in her own room anymore and woke up screaming most nights. The doctor said Sophie needed weekly therapy sessions, and I should expect the symptoms to last for months. She gave me a list of things to watch for, like regression in toilet training or separation anxiety. Sophie had already started showing both. She wouldn't let me out of her sight and cried when I tried to go to the bathroom alone. The company's internal investigation took 2 weeks. They interviewed 15 people from our department. I got called in twice to answer questions about specific incidents. They asked about the spreadsheet Lindsay made tracking my absences and the emails she sent about my reliability. They wanted to know every time I had complained to Aaron and what his response was. Other people started coming forward with their own stories. 3 women told investigators that Lindsay had made comments to them about working mothers being less dedicated than employees without kids. They said they never reported it because they watched Aaron dismiss my complaints. One woman said she heard Lindsay tell an intern that mothers shouldn't be in leadership positions because they couldn't focus on work. The pattern was clear. Lindsay targeted working mothers, and Aaron either ignored it or encouraged it by praising her supposed dedication to the team. Aaron got fired on a Friday afternoon. The company sent an email to the whole department saying he was no longer with the firm due to failure to maintain a safe workplace environment. They said they were implementing new policies around harassment and requiring all managers to complete training on recognizing and addressing workplace bullying. The email didn't mention Lindsay by name, but everyone knew what it was about. My new temporary manager called me that evening to apologize for what I went through. She said the company should have protected me, and they failed. She told me to take as much time as I needed, and my job would be waiting when I was ready to come back. Lisa called me 3 weeks after Lindsay's arraignment. She said Lindsay's lawyer wanted to discuss a plea deal. The prosecutor was willing to let Lindsay plead guilty to reduce charges in exchange for avoiding a trial. The deal included probation, mandatory anger management classes, and a permanent restraining order keeping Lindsay away from me and Sophie. Lisa said it meant Lindsay wouldn't go to jail, but she would have a criminal record and couldn't come near us ever again. I asked what would happen if we didn't take the deal. Lisa said we would go to trial and Sophie might have to testify about what happened. She said trials could take months and there was no guarantee of a conviction even with the security footage. I told her I needed time to think about it. I spent a week trying to decide. Part of me wanted Lindsay to go to jail for what she did to Sophie. I wanted her to face serious consequences and understand how badly she hurt my daughter. But another part of me couldn't imagine putting Sophie through a trial. She was already having nightmares and barely sleeping. Making her testify about being locked in that closet seemed cruel. My therapist helped me work through it. She reminded me that the restraining order meant Lindsay could never come near Sophie again. She said sometimes protecting your child meant choosing the option that caused them the least additional trauma. I called Lisa and told her I would accept the plea deal. Lisa said she would let the prosecutor know. The plea hearing happened on a Thursday morning. I sat in the courtroom with Lisa while Lindsay stood in front of the judge. She wore a gray suit and had her hair pulled back. Her lawyer stood next to her looking nervous. The judge asked if she understood she was pleading guilty to criminal confinement and child endangerment. Lindsay said yes in a quiet voice. Then she read a prepared statement her lawyer had obviously written. She said she never meant to hurt Sophie and she was sorry for what happened. She claimed she made a terrible mistake and wanted to take responsibility for her actions. The words sounded empty and rehearsed like she was reading lines in a play. The judge accepted the plea but added 200 hours of community service working with child safety organizations. He said Lindsay needed to understand the gravity of traumatizing a 5-year-old child. He told her if she violated the restraining order or failed to complete her anger management classes, she would go directly to jail. Lindsay nodded and her lawyer thanked the judge. The company settled with me 6 weeks later. Lisa negotiated the whole thing without me having to do much. They agreed to pay for all of Sophie's therapy sessions for as long as she needed them. They covered Lisa's legal fees and gave me compensation for the 3 years of hostile work environment I endured. The amount was significant enough that I could have quit and lived comfortably for a year while finding a new job. Lisa also got them to provide a strong reference letter and agree not to contest unemployment if I decided to leave. She said it was one of the best settlements she had seen for a case like this. The company clearly wanted to avoid a lawsuit and bad publicity. I decided to stay with the company. I actually liked my job and my clients. The work was interesting and challenging in ways that made me feel accomplished. The new management team seemed genuinely committed to changing the culture. They promoted me to senior account manager with a 20% raise. They moved me to a different floor with a new team that was welcoming and professional. My new manager checked in regularly to make sure I had everything I needed. She never questioned when I left at 5 to get Sophie from daycare. She told me on my first day that she had 2 kids of her own and understood that being a good parent made you a better employee. The team had 3 other working mothers who immediately invited me to lunch. They told me they were glad I stayed and that what happened to me should never happen to anyone. Sophie's therapy sessions happened every Tuesday afternoon. The doctor's office had a playroom where Sophie could work through her feelings using toys and art supplies. After 3 months, the nightmares started happening less often. Some weeks she slept through the night without waking up scared. She began talking about what happened in simple terms that showed she was processing it. She told me the mean lady made a bad choice and couldn't hurt her anymore because she wasn't allowed to come near us. Her doctor said this was good progress and showed Sophie was developing healthy coping skills. She still slept in my bed most nights, but she was starting to spend time in her own room during the day. She played with her toys there and sometimes took naps in her bed. The doctor said we should let her move at her own pace and not rush her back to sleeping alone. 6 months passed and I landed 2 major clients for the company. The first was a tech startup that needed a complete rebrand. I pitched them a strategy that focused on their product benefits instead of just features. They signed a 6-month contract worth more than any account our team had brought in that quarter. The second client was a healthcare company expanding into new markets. I developed their campaign strategy, and they were so impressed they extended the contract for another year. My new manager called me into her office after the healthcare deal closed. She told me I was doing amazing work, and the client specifically requested to work with me on future projects. She asked if I needed anything to make my job easier. I mentioned that sometimes I had to leave right at 5 for daycare pickup and felt bad about it. She looked confused and said leaving at 5 was normal. She told me she had 2 kids and always left by 5:30 herself. She said being a good parent made you better at time management and prioritizing tasks. The other people on my new team were great. 3 of them were working mothers who invited me to lunch during my first week. They shared tips about managing work and kids. One woman brought her daughter to the office sometimes when school was closed and nobody cared. Another had photos of her kids all over her desk and talked about them proudly during meetings. Nobody ever made comments about my parenting or questioned my commitment. When I had to leave for Sophie's school events, my manager just asked me to update my calendar. The team actually celebrated when I told them about landing the tech startup account. They took me out for drinks after work and toasted to my success. Then everything changed again on a Tuesday morning. Sophie's daycare director called me at 9:30. Her voice sounded tight and worried. She said Lindsay had shown up at the daycare asking to see Sophie. The staff recognized her immediately from the photos I had given them when the restraining order was issued. They told Lindsay she needed to leave or they would call the police. Lindsay started crying and said she just wanted to apologize to Sophie for what happened. She said she had been going to therapy and realized how much she had hurt us. The director told her that didn't matter because there was a legal order keeping her away from both of us. Lindsay refused to leave the parking lot. She sat in her car watching the playground where the kids were playing outside. The director called the police and kept all the children inside until officers arrived. 2 patrol cars showed up within 10 minutes. Lindsay was still sitting in her car when they approached her. She got out and tried to explain that she just wanted to make things right. The officers checked the restraining order in their system and told her she was under arrest for violating it. She started sobbing and saying this wasn't fair. They handcuffed her and put her in the back of the patrol car. The director called me after Lindsay was taken away and assured me Sophie never saw her. She said the staff handled everything perfectly, and Sophie was safe inside playing with blocks the whole time. I got a call from the prosecutor's office that afternoon. He told me Lindsay had violated a court order and would face serious consequences. He said the judge took restraining order violations very seriously, especially when children were involved. Lindsay's hearing was scheduled for the next week. The prosecutor said he would push for jail time since she had deliberately gone to my daughter's daycare, despite knowing she was legally forbidden from coming near us. He asked if I wanted to provide a victim impact statement. I said yes. At the hearing, Lindsay stood before the judge looking terrible. Her hair was messy and she had dark circles under her eyes. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was genuinely remorseful and just wanted closure. The judge cut him off and said the restraining order existed for a reason. He said Lindsay had already traumatized a child, and now she was continuing to harass the family. He sentenced her to 60 days in jail. Lindsay started crying and her lawyer asked for probation instead. The judge said no. He said maybe 60 days would teach her that court orders were not suggestions. The bailiff led her away still crying. I felt relieved watching her go. She had finally faced real consequences for her actions. The company reached out to me a month later about developing new workplace policies. They wanted my input on preventing harassment and creating a better environment for working parents. I met with the head of HR and 2 executives. They asked me to describe everything that had happened with Lindsay and what warning signs were missed. I told them about the 3 years of comments and how my complaints were dismissed. I explained how Aaron had actually praised Lindsay for tracking my parenting-related absences. They looked uncomfortable hearing all of this laid out. The HR director said they wanted to make sure nothing like this ever happened again. They asked if I would help write new policies around harassment reporting and family-friendly scheduling. They also wanted me to train managers on recognizing subtle discrimination patterns. I agreed because I didn't want any other parent to go through what I had experienced. We spent weeks developing the new policies. They included mandatory harassment training for all employees. Managers had to document any complaints immediately, and HR would investigate within 48 hours. The company also implemented flexible scheduling options for parents and stopped scheduling important meetings after 4:30. They created a clear process for reporting discrimination with multiple channels so people didn't have to go through their direct manager. I led the first training session for managers, and it felt good helping create real change. A year after everything happened, Sophie started kindergarten. She walked into her classroom confidently on the first day and barely looked back at me. Her teacher said she was doing great and made friends easily. The nightmares had stopped months ago. She slept in her own bed now and talked about the closet incident like it was something that happened a long time ago to someone else. Her therapist said she had processed the trauma in a healthy way and didn't need regular sessions anymore. At work, I was considered for a director-level position. My manager nominated me and said my client work and policy development made me a strong candidate. The interview process would start next month. Sophie and I had a routine that worked. I picked her up from the school at 3 and we spent afternoons together doing homework and playing. Some evenings we went to the park or got ice cream. Weekends were for adventures like the zoo or children's museum. I had learned that protecting her and standing up for myself was the most important thing I could have done. Our life was genuinely better than it had been before Lindsay joined our team. Sophie was happy and confident. I had a job I loved with people who respected me. Everything had worked out better than I could have imagined back when I was enduring Lindsay's daily harassment. Standing up for myself and my daughter had changed both of our lives for the better. So yeah, that happened. I don't even know how we got here, but thanks for sticking around. This honestly feels more like a late-night chat than a video.